Going live.
Why don't we just go live on your OnlyFans page?
Here we go. All right, guys. How we doing tonight? We are finally. Whoa. I'll tell you what. It takes a lot. Thanks to our friends at YouTube. Tongue in cheek there. But anyway, tonight, Cities and Suburb is live. Our phone lines are 1-800-555-555-625. So call in now. Anyway.
That almost sounded like a real number.
Yeah, it almost did, actually. It's like 867-5309. That almost sounded like a real number, too, right?
Call for a good time.
Yeah. If you lived in Brookfield in the 70s, that you got, I think you got hammered with that number. But anyway, hey, welcome. We have Peter K, the Cushman, the Ump, and we're going to talk things local, Worcester, a lot of stuff going on. We're going to talk a little bit about the heat.
It sucks. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, let's just spoil alert. Yeah. Some Major League Baseball. And so anyway, welcome, Mr. K.
Always good to be here, Kenny.
All right. Always good to have you. So I don't actually know where to begin. I think maybe starting with a couple of things in Worcester. I mean, you're definitely a housing person working in that, that segment, of community services. So, but a couple of things. I want to talk a little bit about some of the housing problems. But, there was that vigil this week, at the beginning of the week, for a young 13-year-old girl that was killed in a really bizarre car accident. What was it? Saturday night at the corner of Main Street and Chandler Street. And yeah, I don't know. I saw the vigil going on, and I read a little bit about, the vigil that they came out, and one young girl said, I'm sick of burying my friends, but, I'm having a hard time, who was the victim, and did the victims I guess there were like 5 people in this car that were going down Chandler Street, 70 miles an hour. You know a little bit more about the story than me, but I was a little, I don't know, taken aback by the vigil, because I thought that it was a stolen vehicle, and the people who stole the vehicle were thrown from the vehicle and were killed. I mean, that's what I'm thinking, or reading. Maybe I don't know enough about it, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, again, I don't have much more information than you do. And again, yesterday I was following up on the story, and then all of a sudden I got baseball games to do. So, I think you and I are in the same, speculatory camps. But honestly, I mean, I think it's a little the vigil's a little misguided. I mean, family and friends are family and friends, and every family and every friend has their blemishes, their warts, and everybody makes mistakes. But I mean, I think it's a little bit misplaced, the fact that you have, city officials and community officials coming out and questioning the police department on this one. I mean, I have my own issues with the police department. I think there are violations. We just had the cop who just got busted for stealing from his own department.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the police are not perfect. But and I am the first one to call them out when they do run afoul. But
yeah,
on
me
this
too.
one, I just don't get it. I mean, I can't even drive 20 miles an hour down Chandler Street without someone walking in front of my car. So I can't imagine going 70 miles an hour down a very densely populated street, and then just because the cops flip on their lights, you lose control and crash. I mean, last time I checked, that was actually one of the responsibilities for the police is to, serve and protect. And, following up on a stolen vehicle that's going a dangerous speed down, again, an inner city street where there are a lot of people and a lot of young people, especially in that area, it's just dangerous. And I think it is a little bit misplaced officials and some community activists who are trying to politicize it, and I think it's a misplaced effort by them.
Yeah, no, yeah, because I agree. I mean, there's been this controversy on what I don't know what the police involvement was leading up to this. It's been, and I should have, before we even talked about it, maybe it's irresponsible for me to even comment on it, but only going by the images, what I see in the news. But let me just, again, kind of chuckle about, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and it's downtown Worcester. And I'm thinking, okay, well, who's really, I mean, to be honest with you, I drove through downtown Worcester today and I couldn't see 5 people walking anywhere. So,
well, it is also 150 degrees today. I mean, it's a little better to walk on the surface of the sun right now than it is to walk down the street.
Oh yeah, no, and I agree, but I'll leave that comment for the next segment. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, but 1 o'clock in the morning, 70 miles an hour, going through 5 red lights or whatever they did to crash. So yeah, so for people who don't know, it was a major car wreck. A 13-year-old girl was killed. I don't know if she was the driver, but she was in the vehicle and it was stolen. And then there was a vigil, not like making it okay, but almost kind of like making the folks that stole the vehicle, that they were victims. And I don't know where that's coming from. Maybe they're shifting the blame to the police. It wouldn't have happened if were the police actually chasing this person, or did they not respond? Do you know that?
So from what I've heard, and again, part of this is just conjecture and speculation from what I've heard from people, is we're not sure. It goes from anywhere between the police putting on their lights and responding. There's some people who say there was a pursuit. I think the last article I read, the police were denying that there was actually, they're denying a pursuit. And again, different departments have different rules about that. I mean, not some police departments they don't want chases.
No, they let the person go until they crash themselves.
Right, or they find them later. I mean, you remember all those like cops videos from the 90s where there's like 100-mile-an-hour chase down, Nebraska Highway 10.
Yeah.
But it's a different, some departments do have rules about that. And so I don't know. I think they're still investigating a lot of it.
Or Peter, or you have the LA, the police chase of O.J. Simpson when he was doing 15 miles an hour on the LA freeway.
Right. Well, that is prime TV right there. I was young when that happened, and I remember that was enthralling even back then.
Oh yeah, and if people don't know, you can always go to YouTube and check out the video of OJ being followed in his white Ford Bronco with he was a passenger, I believe, and there was another football buddy of his driving, calling the police saying OJ's going to kill himself, OJ's going to kill himself, and all this stuff. And yeah, but they of course in LA, they let they do chase you, and they also have the helicopter, because when the perp jumps out of the car and starts running through the neighborhoods, right? They got the helicopter, and usually the news channel or kind of assisting in it. But this wasn't that at all. This was just, and I don't know if it's indicative of where Worcester's going in terms of its growth, or in terms of just, we talk a lot about, the downtown redevelopment and things like that, but that's not touching every corner or every demographic in a city. Now, I was young, and when I was 13, 14, 15, I did some stupid stuff. I'm not saying that, but I never would have stolen a car, So I'm 13 years old. First of all, where's my mom? My mom, if I was out, I would have had to jump out a 2-story window to be out at 1 o'clock in the morning at 13 years old. So just our families and people who live in the inner cities, just to me, and my hallucination, hopefully is a reality that, I mean, just this whole family unit structure breakdown, people not control, moms and dads or absentee dads not controlling their, not controlling them, but not having any clue about what their kids are doing or maybe faced with. So I look at that as part and parcel to this. 13 years old, dead, right? 13 years old, dead.
I mean, again, in a way, I agree. In some ways, I say I don't know what the situation was. I mean, again, the economy and demographics where it's at. Who knows? Maybe the mother was working overnight shift. I think the shocking thing of the story to me, and again, it goes back to the fact that you get these like low-level Worcester politicians who now we're starting to elect to the council and the school committee.
Yeah.
It's been very, the city council has become, and the school committee for that matter, has become very posturing on social issues, which again is fine. They can do that, even though they don't have much to do with a lot of that. But the thing is, it's almost like, I mean, again, hypothetically speaking, if I was a 13-year-old, I stole a car, I crashed it, I died, my family would probably feel bad about it. And I would hope my family, wouldn't shun my funeral and they would have questions. That's fine.
Yeah. No one, 13 years old. I mean, come on,
My big bugaboo of this whole situation is the fact that, again, you have these low-level city politicians and community activists who are kind of pushing a lot of the conversation of where the city of Worcester is going. They're taking advantage of this, and that's what I think is wrong, and that's what I think is most shocking about this. I mean, there should be an investigation. You should see what happened if everything was followed correctly. But I think, going out there, as they're still towing the car, and they're blaming the city, they're blaming systemic racism, they're blaming the police. I think that's a problem, and I think that's not healthy to the conversation in the city right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, well, God rest their souls, man. But regardless, I think when you're 13, you just, or whatever age, if you're under 20, even under 30, you're invincible. Pretty much, you see it with some young athletes that are signed to big contracts and, professional athletes, people who are under 30, and I believe me, I was under 30 because I'm almost 60. So, thank God I made it this far, but it's just one bad decision that can alter the course of your life. And I'm thinking when you're 13 years old, all your decisions aren't up to you. And so I question why a 13-year-old, bottom line, was out at 1:00 in the morning. Anyway, so moving ahead, I wanted to touch a little bit, ask you a little bit about any thoughts about what's going to happen with the Denholm building downtown, what they call Middle Main Street, which is dead as an effing doornail. Now we're going to knock down a department store, Denholm's and McKay, the Boston store, came into Worcester in the early 1900s, and Denholm's was the first department store in Worcester to actually have an escalator, and it was such a big deal. And it was put in by, I could look it up, a very notable escalator company. But so now, the building's been home to nonprofits, and it's actually run condo style. People pay, condo fees for the maintenance, but I believe the building's empty now. I drove by it the other day. I mean, that thing, just like a lot of buildings downtown, need a total. I just want to break out a whole bucket of Dawn soap and a bucket of hot water with a long brush and scrub all those buildings because they need serious sandblasting. But Denholm's, yeah, it's got its nostalgia, but the city owns it now, and the city doesn't want to be a landlord, right? They're going to want to sell that property, and they want to sell a property, and whether there's a building on the property or not, that's, well, if there's a building on it, there's more tax revenue.
Right.
But what do you think? What do you think? I mean, you're a Worcester guy like me. I remember Denholm's. I've been in that building when it was a full dressed department store. And the sad part about it is that we're trying to encourage people to live friggin' downtown, which they are, and there's no place for them to shop. Oh, we're going to do boutiques. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to open up a lot of smaller storefronts that aren't going to last. So, I mean, the fate of the retail component, we're knocking down a major. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had Shaq saying, almost flipped the bird to Worcester and said, I'm done. And then we had the hardware store, Elwood Adams hardware store way down, which is the oldest retail store on Main Street down there on North Main by the courthouse, closed its doors. And we're pumping all this life into one part of the body of downtown Worcester, which is Polar Park and all of that. But Main Street is still hello. So, I mean, Denholm, the fate of Middle Worcester, Main Street. What are your thoughts?
I mean, the city of Worcester, to a certain extent, has actually, to my surprise, hasn't done bad generally in that downtown area around the old Telegram building. I actually think they've done some good. Okay. I think they've really kind of stabilized that area in some ways. Mm-hmm. You're starting to, but it's a very seasonal fix in a lot of ways. I mean, you do have people living in Front Street. You do have some people living in those condos, even though they're still not selling at the kind of a clip they, I think, originally envisioned. But the reality is, a lot of those people aren't going to shop downtown Worcester. They're going to their jobs. They're doing what most people do. I mean, the general downtown mall mentality, downtown shopping, that has to be a very organic thing. And I think Worcester is so infatuated with, fixing up certain segments of Worcester while ignoring others. And mm-hmm. that section of Main Street, again, you call it lower. Would you call it lower Main?
No, well, I'm sorry, I meant middle Main Street. Yeah. is the heart and soul across from City Hall. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you call it Middle Main. I mean, back in the day, and even now, a lot of people in the social service, area, we still call that the heroin half mile. I mean, that is the highest. That is for a while, and it might still be. I may be wrong, but it's the amount of heroin arrests and use of illegal narcotics are very prevalent in that area, and that's a tough area to fix up because you still do have buildings like the Albion. You still do have a lot of very low-income apartments and social service agencies in that stretch. So it's kind of a hard sell. And, I think, again, the city's done an okay job stabilizing around the old Telegram building, but you don't see a lot of those people going past Hanover. You don't see a lot of those people making their way down much further than, that Santander around downtown, because mm-hmm. the reality is it's still a very rough area. And, I don't know if, blowing up the Denholm building and building, I'm assuming it's going to be a combination of shops and housing.
Well, a lot of people think it's going. A lot of people think it's going to be knocked down.
It might. I mean,
I'm one of those. I think Preservation Worcester, Heritage Worcester, a lot of people I follow, a lot of groups I follow online, they post every time a building gets demolished, and that there's a good chance that now maybe it won't right now because we have an interim city manager, but I think if Ed Augustus was still a city manager, I think it would be a definite wrecking ball mission.
Yeah, I mean, again, you've been inside it maybe not as recently. I mean, I've been inside it when it's more a social service hub. And it is a very unwieldy building once you're inside. I mean, they basically subdivided up an old department store into office space.
Right.
And it's not, you can't use it for its purpose now. It would be very difficult. And so I think you have to look at, the economics of it. I mean, you can't put storefronts in that building because it's just not it's just too unwieldy. So I mean, you're either looking at a multi-million-dollar redevelopment for a building, or probably the cheaper route, honestly, is to knock it down and build a newer building that actually is tailored to what the city wants to do. Whatever the city wants to do in their redevelopment plan.
And you're right, and I think you just hit it. So that's what's going to happen, because what is happening is that the building needs a lot of work, and to put that work into it, it's kind of like you have an old car, the car's worth $1,000, but I need to put $2,500 worth of repairs into it, Is it just easier for you to go out and buy a newer car? Now you have to think, can I afford a newer car, or do I just keep putting money into my old junk? And I think that's what's been happening with the Denholm building. It's an old, it doesn't look it because of its concrete. It's not made of brick and wood like some of the old Worcester structures, but it's got a lot of problems. And from what I've heard, it would be much easier to level it, have a developer come in and say, sell the partial, make a plan through the, the downtown development corporation and Worcester Redevelopment Authority, if you will, and make better use of it. And then I don't always side with the bleeding hearts. Oh, the building, it's so historic. And, you're my age. People that are younger than me and coming up, they're not going to remember that Denholm's was there. They're going to see it in a black and white photo 50 years from now and go, oh, wow,
right.
wow.
Well, don't forget, Ken, the other thing a lot of people forget about Worcester is that downtown Worcester, for the most part, the face of downtown Worcester, they plastered over the old face. So most of what you see now in downtown Worcester, as you go down Main Street, that's not original Worcester. They went in and redid all those buildings years ago to make it look more like kind of a New York type building. I mean, Worcester had, unique looking downtown buildings. I mean, you saw it. They started doing with shacks. They're working on removing kind of the outer shell.
Yep.
The city kind of went in and put in when that was fashionable. But again, I mean, it's honestly, it's probably cheaper, and it makes more sense if they were to go in. And again, you could put lofts again, I'm not for more expensive lofts downtown because I think the city's kind of getting saturated with that. But that's where things are trending. You have shops down below, storefront shops, and you do housing above it. I mean, the fact is the city has been paying attention to that for a long time, that area. Even going back to when the PIP shelter used to be on Main Street, that was, and again, you say what you will about the PIP shelter, but it was properly, it was the right size, it had enough beds, but the city didn't like the idea that they were putting money into redeveloping downtown, and then you had all these homeless people standing in front of the building. So the city put pressure on SMOC, and then the city bought and built that whole new shelter on Queen Street, which is nowhere near adequate for the homeless population in Worcester. So the city does have, the city's been watching that area for a while, and they've done small things, but I think knocking down the Denholm and trying to continue to expand the ripple down Main Street towards the Y, I think that they've been doing that for a number of years and kind of setting this up.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, I just want to say we have System Nomad, one of the followers, the city and suburbs. Thank you, System. He's one of our big fans, Peter. And so shout out to System.
Like and share. Is that what it is? Hit the like button.
Not even that. I'm just saying thanks for tuning in. And this guy, he's a Worcester guy. lives over by, on the main street. So thank you, sister, for tuning in. And, keep your comments coming. So, yeah, we're chatting here live with Peter Cush. Peter is a professional, semi-pro umpire in basketball and in baseball, travels all around. All around. And so that's who we're talking to, but he's also an expert on housing in the Worcester area. And so we're just covering some things tonight. And we're just finishing up Middle Worcester. And I get what you're saying, Peter. I guess the one original piece of architecture and landscape that still goes back to the 1800s is Harrington Corner. Okay, that corner you go, and that is the corner where where the Shawmut building is, the glass tower,
Yeah.
and Harrington Corner right there on Front Street. And that really has not changed. That building actually is very beautiful. It even says Harrington Corner. And I have to figure out who Harrington was. They named the high school after him, and he was a Worcester guy. But if you have your name on a building in brick that can't be erased, then you were somebody back then. But that's the one actually piece of landscape I always enjoy seeing. So I'm just saying Worcester's positioned itself. It's got a lot of nice storefronts up Franklin Street, down Middle Main, across City Hall, and down to Front Street. And I get what you're saying. I like the word stabilize. The city has done some things to stabilize, and I agree that retail should be organic, which means it responds to a need. But my challenge is, okay, we were supposed to get people living downtown. We built all these things downtown, and I don't even know where to get a gosh dang gallon of milk if I'm living across from the hub. Where do I get a gallon of milk? Well, I walk out of my apartment. I'm on the 10th floor. Do I still have to get into my car and drive to Price Chopper? Okay. No, you can get your milk over at CVS, which closes at 9:00.
Right.
There's just, so they're trying to turn it into an 18-hour city. It is an 18-hour city on the other part of the body, which is Polar Park, the Canal District. I used to hear things about, should the Canal District be the actual downtown Worcester, and that Worcester downtown just has to, across from City Hall, just has to rest on the fact that you'll always be a 9 to 5 from now on financial district and business district. I don't know.
It's not. A couple points on that, and I think that one is Worcester. Let me start by saying Worcester has this misplaced idea that they can make Worcester a walkable city. It's not. It probably will never be.
Mm-hmm.
It's a city made up of neighborhoods. You're not talking about Soho. You're not talking about Waterfront District in Burlington or the Port in Portland, Old Port. You're talking about a city that has a highway running right through the heart of it. It's a driving city, and it will probably, for the foreseeable future, be a driving city. So all those people, and again, I know the term, some people use the term with pride, some people think it's a derogatory term, but the whole yuppification of downtown Worcester, all those people they're attracting, all those, I'm using air quotations, you can't see it, but all those yuppies they're attracting, they're not going to go to a bodega on the corner of Main and Foster Street. They're going to go to the grocery store like everybody else, and I think that's a little misplaced. But honestly, downtown Worcester, you go to other cities, other medium-sized cities that are kind of the bigger city in the area. Albany, Hartford, for a lesser extent, Providence. Once the when I was in Albany years ago, once the state legislature is not in session, Albany is a dead zone.
Yeah.
You could go down Milk Street in Boston in the financial district on a Saturday, and there's nobody there, unless somebody's just doing a walking tour of Boston. the reality is, certain you can only do so much with an area, and with Worcester, the whole nightlife and attractions have moved around. For a while, it was Main Street when you kind of had Irish Times going. You had some bars on that stretch right there.
Mm-hmm.
Then it moved to Shrewsbury Street when they revitalized Shrewsbury Street.
Yep.
You had a big nightlife, restaurants, and you had some condos being built up around that area. And now you have kind of the Canal District. They've pumped a lot of money into that. And, there's a disconnect between, and I think the city ultimately envisions, people being able to walk from the Canal District into downtown.
Yeah.
And I don't see that. And that's one thing I think that's a disconnect in the city's vision that I don't see them being able to remedy anytime soon.
I agree. And it's a long walk.
It is a long walk.
It is a long walk. And, unless there's things to look at in between, which I guess if you walk down, Green Street, there's a lot of, past the Worcester Market and to the core, but of Worcester, but, you've got to feel safe. First of all, that's the big thing. Whether you're safe or not depends on how you feel. If you feel like something isn't safe, like after the ball game, that's why I want to talk to you about this Ruth Chris. Have you heard about Ruth Chris?
No.
It's a new steakhouse opening up in the Mercantile District. Okay, they have 150 locations in North and South America. They're looking forward to their location in Worcester. And I'm thinking, okay, a steakhouse, Mercantile Center. So say that's my destination coming back from the ball game. It's still a long walk. And I know that there was this one person that wanted to start a shuttle service, basically beginning at 11 o'clock at night for people to, if you're leaving this location, we take you over here. It would all be free. I mean, maybe, again, drivable, not walkable, right? So, yeah, I don't get it. But, yeah, so there's got to be some kind of draw downtown for people to actually, because there's so much to do in the Canal District. Why would you walk downtown?
Right. And I mean, and the colleges, to a lesser extent, which the consortium did that for years. I don't know if they're still running that. But you used to have a shuttle that used to go between all the colleges, and they would have it stop downtown right in front of what used to be Media Point, which is now the Registry of Deeds.
Yep.
And it really didn't do anything to get the college kids out in the community. And again, it's a walk, it's a haul. But again, I walk around Boston when I go to Boston. Some people might not want to do that. And again, it is a driving city. And it seems like it's the expectation of getting somebody to go to a Woo Sox game, then get in their car, drive over to downtown, find a parking spot. I just don't see that when there are other options. The suburbs have restaurants you can drive to as well, where you don't have to jockey for a spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that the walking city model is a great model. You see it in some smaller cities, and it really works. But again, it's an organic thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's an area where you had people living before, where you had shops. You go, you put money into it, you fix it up, and people will go. But with Worcester, it's not an organic setup. It's a very forced organic. It's very forced.
Yeah, it's very forced. Yeah.
Right. You're pumping money into it, and it's a build it, and they will come. But I don't know if people want to be driving from point A to point B. I just don't know if Worcester, if Worcester residents want that.
Yeah. So the system says, system says, I don't have a car. I wish it was more walkable. You don't need a car to live near Main Middle. Is it possible to make Worcester more walkable? I use a bicycle to get around. I mean, that's cool. Yeah, they have all those bike lanes that people drive in, Driving is
I drive them all the time. It gets you through traffic quicker.
yeah. Well, systems driving and you hit my man and you'll have a problem. Driving isn't safe in Worcester. I take the city bus. Sometimes the city bus though. Worcester needs to act more like Boston. I wish. And I said, yeah, you're kind of right. I mean, he's kind of making a point, so it's all kind of different experiences, I mean, you use what you can use and you leave the rest. And, there's some people who take the bus, some people who don't take the bus. We know someone that we see every day, that comes in and says, hey, you wouldn't believe what happened down at the hub. And you wouldn't, so,
Right.
but the question is right. I mean, economically vibrant downtown, Worcester has a major responsibility, not just to itself and to its residents, but it's also the economic hub of Worcester County.
Right. Well, the thing is, people have to kind of take Boston out of the equation because Boston is unique, where most people who live in Boston don't live in Boston proper. They live in Dorchester. They live in Brighton. They live in Allston, and what they do. Yeah, in Allston you do have those little corner bodegas, but the jobs and the major shopping is in Boston. And WRTA is a nightmare right now. It hasn't been properly run for decades, and it's not. The other thing about Boston too is it's a tourist destination. Worcester's not a tourist destination.
Right.
You don't see people walking around downtown Worcester taking pictures, unless they're taking pictures of a crime scene.
Well, I'm trying to change that with the tours that I give a Worcester. I want to start my own Kenny B duck tours of Worcester. Worcester does have a lot of history, but you're right. I mean,
you should get that old Maxwell Silverman double-decker bus and just give tours all around Worcester.
There you go. I'd love it, and I can take you right back to 1673. But I digress. I know what you mean about. I know when you were saying about Boston. Yes.
Because Boston's like a spider web. You have people coming from out in, and it's a network that leads you. All roads lead to downtown Crossing or Park Street. Worcester doesn't have that. The hub is a terrifying place. I have driven by the hub. I have dropped people off at the hub. I have been stuck at that red light in front of the hub, and I have seen everything from drug deals to fights to car accidents. It's not an attractive area.
No.
People from outside. I mean, public transportation in Boston is like you take public transportation in Boston. Awesome. 90% of Bostonites do. But when you get to Worcester, if you tell people you're taking the bus, they kind of look at you like, "Oh, you take the bus? That's weird." It's true though. I mean, it's not a badge of honor to take the public transportation in Worcester. It's not sexy. It's not something people want to do. You take the bus because you have to take the bus.
Right.
And it's not dependable. In Boston, you can get on the Green Line and go to Park Street, but then you get from the Green Line to the Red Line, and you can end up in Cambridge. Just don't go on the Orange Line because you may burst into flames.
Of course. On cars that are 60 years old, by the way, but
yes.
Yeah, Boston, it may get you there, but that's not what the news is focusing on lately. There are people on fire that are jumping into the river.
Yeah, just stay up the orange and blue line and you'll be fine.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you won't have an orange line because they're taking that off until September 27th.
That's true. You got to take those buses, which nobody likes anyway.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Maybe you can do it live from a flaming car on the orange line.
No, we'll just do it. We'll get some rafts and just float down the Mystic River.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so I mean that's not to pick on Worcester. It's got the good, it's got the bad, it's got the thing. So
it's got the ugly.
What's that?
Got the good, the bad, and the ugly.
It definitely has. Yeah, exactly. You said it right. So listen, just real quick, just to make it harder on our friends in the city, it's inflation is up, 9.1%, the highest since 1981. Food prices, all lumped in together, whether it's chicken, butter, or how much groceries prices. I mean, just from last year, Peter, June 20 to June 22. Let's see, 100% whole grain oats, Cheerios cereal, 18 ounces, was $4.19. Now that's up to $4.35. Coca-Cola original soda pop, 12 fluid ounces, 12-pack cans, was $5.45. Now it's $5.81. So the total impact is about 12.2%, and we're seeing that in rents. Inflation is going to be passed on to the consumer. So I'm just saying, I know I've stopped some of my takeout, and it's just going to hurt small businesses. It's certainly not helping based on our conversation about Worcester, I mean, I'd be a little leery about, a steakhouse like Ruth Chris opening up in downtown and expecting flurries of people to come in. But nonetheless, so that's where we're at with that. We talked about that today, actually, about inflation. So it's getting all of us. But so speaking of inflation, let's just real quick today, let's switch it to MLB. And a lot of stuff going on with in Major League Baseball. Jackie Bradley Jr. from the Red Sox was given his what?
Walking papers.
Given his walking papers. Great glove, right?
Great glove.
210 batting average.
I mean, again, I think that, the Bradley thing, I think, is kind of an after spot. I mean, again, I'm not a Red Sox fan. I've never really understood the infatuation with Jackie Bradley Jr. I drive around a lot, so most times when I listen to a Red Sox game, it's on the radio, and they just gush about, runs saved, runs prevented, and it's like, yeah, the guy may catch a fly ball, but then he goes 0 for 5 at the plate with 4 Ks. I mean, it just I don't understand why people A are infatuated with Bradley, but B are surprised that they moved on.
Yeah, but how does a guy like him make it this far with a you have obviously and maybe it's just the times that the Red Sox found this kid and said, wow, what a glove. And maybe they were surrounded by the David Ortizes and the Mannies and the offense where they could say, who cares about his offense, like he's a first baseman, but man, he could save a lot of runs. I think maybe it's just what they needed at the time, but how does a kid like that make it all the way when you really only have one tool,
Well, I think honestly, Ken, I think we talked about this like a year ago, or kind of touched on it, it's the way the game has changed. I mean, back in the day, teams had room for a guy like Bradley, but they were usually reserved bench guys. I mean, David Eckstein, who played a long time for the Cardinals and for a while with the Blue Jays, was known more for his glove than his bat. But he was a respectable batter because he would spread the ball around. He would hit singles. He would stretch a single into a double, and he would have a respectable batting average. I think the way the game has changed is the focus is so much on hitting over the shift. It's so much about hitting the long ball that, I mean, if Bradley could learn how to hit singles and not worry about, swinging over the shift, he may, if Bradley was around 15, 20 years ago, he probably could be on an everyday MLB roster and have a nice 12-year career like Eckstein. But nowadays, it's all about the shift, hitting over the shift. It's about the long ball, and it's we talked about in the pre-show. A home run nowadays is so much different than a home run was 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, a home run 15 years ago when I was a kid was such a rarity. And now you could go to 2 games in a row without seeing a home run. Nowadays, you're surprised you go 2 innings without seeing a home run.
Yeah. Huh. So do you think that anybody will pick JBJ up?
Probably. I mean, again, there's always a spot. There's always a team that's looking for roster fillers. I mean, you got teams like who are out of it who just want to fill out rosters.
Mm-hmm.
They'll probably try to turn him into like a defensive. I mean, again, it depends what the cost. I mean, you're talking about inflation. I mean, Juan Soto is going to be a $500 million baseball player. That's a billion with a B at some point.
I know.
And so I think it's about the price. I mean, if Jackie Bradley is willing to play baseball for less money, I think he can find a niche, on a team. I mean, Andrew Benintendi is another good example. Not as good with the glove, but a little better with the bat. I mean, he's at a ceiling. He's a very serviceable major league baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
Not a power hitter. Benintendi's an old kind of throwback. He sprays the ball. He hits line drives. He doesn't have a big uppercut swing with, strong exit velocity. His focus is putting the ball in play, and you don't really see as much of that as you used to.
Yeah, and he gets on base.
Right.
Right, like Billy Beanball. He gets on base.
It's an old school baseball which you don't see a ton of anymore. And again, I've changed my opinion that when they used to have the shift, I always said, bunt or hit around the shift. But it's getting to a point where baseball games have become so boring. They've become so home run, hit or bust. You watch the games and you're like, wow, I didn't see anything for 9 innings except a guy throwing a ball and a guy trying to hit it as far as he possibly can.
Yeah, actually, you're right. I think that's exactly. I don't know why, but even with Polar Park, and I'm guilty, guys. As a baseball enthusiast, not an enthusiast, but I love baseball. I think it's the best sport in America. But right now, I'm saying it's the best sport in America next to football. They used to soak up all that pastime, and that's why I don't get the whole friggin' All-Star game thing. And we got to take a whole friggin' week off and holding on that whole Americana thing. But I think you just hit it on the nose. It's like, yeah, it's become boring. And first of all, that's been like the for people who don't like baseball, that's the first thing they say. It's boring.
Right, and again, it's not like it's not like a goal in hockey where you could have a guy going a 3-on-1 breakaway or a 1-on goalie breakaway and score an amazing backhanded goal, or football where a guy makes a behind the back, eyes closed, 3 guys hanging off and touchdown in the end zone. A home run is a home run. It's a guy who hits a ball over. I mean, you may as well play solitaire. It's just a guy hitting the ball, and the end result is always the same thing. Ball goes over the fence. There's nothing interesting about a home run anymore, which again, back in the day, a home run used to be awesome. You get up, you cheer, but now it's like you're just sitting there waiting for a guy to hit a home run, stand up and cheer, and that's kind of what baseball's become.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just going to show you, even when the Red Sox were down 20-0, instead of trying to get runners on and trying to, move some runners along, they're just swinging for the fences.
Yeah. And actually, that's a real scenario, because they did lose this year 28-5, right, against Toronto.
Which KBJ got a home run in, by the way.
Oh, right. So we should keep him. Damn. He's so good in a losing effort.
Right. So instead of trying to hit a single and, maybe produce, get some momentum, he hits a home run. I mean, again, I don't think a home run is a huge momentum builder. It's like the pitcher made a mistake and the pitcher gets a chance, unless it's like a walk-off home run or an impressive home run, you're not building any real momentum with a home run.
No.
You hit a home run, the play's over, you move on to the next play.
The only way you remember that is if you're Bucky Dent in 1978.
Right, and even back then, that's when a home run meant a hell of a lot more than a home run means now.
There you go. Well said. So listen, you've been umpiring, right? You've been traveling around. The heat is crazy. Are you working this week at all?
I have 2 games. I have 2 games tomorrow. I have 3 games on Saturday. I have 3 games on Sunday. So it's going to be a very action-packed weekend.
Now, do you have to bring like 3 different shirts, or do you just kind of troll around there in the sweaty umpire suit for each game?
Honestly, it depends. I mean, depending on who you work with.
I hope you're not wearing Depends, by the way. I hope you're not wearing them.
Oh no, I just go freestyle. I just free ball, man. I don't wear anything under that. But no, I mean it depends on the situation. I mean, typically if you're doing like 4 games, you try to break it up. Try to break the plates up because usually you work 2-man crews. So you'll do 2 games behind the plate and 2 games on the bases. And I mean, I prefer not to take the equipment off and put it back on. So I try to do both my plate games back to back. So after I'm done, I can take my equipment off, I can spray it down, I can stick it in my trunk, and then I can smell all the way home. But I don't have to take. There's no worse feeling than taking equipment off, getting in a car, driving to a location, and putting the equipment back on.
Oh, that must be awful. Yeah.
Yeah. So ideally, you want to try to knock it out. But we do change shirts. But it's all about what you and your partner. Like yesterday, my partner and I, we started off with a light blue uniform, and then we had a night game at 8:00, and we switched right over to the black at 8. So.
Oh wow.
We do change.
So what about you stay hydrated? What about the mosquitoes? I mean, you're back there. I mean, for me as a drummer, I play outside gigs, and I'm like, I've got my hands going like this, and I hear mosquitoes buzzing everywhere. I mean, I make sure though I douse myself with, some kind of poison to keep those things away. I mean, what's it like? I mean, behind there for a couple of hours in this kind of heat.
Honestly, most days once the equipment's on, you kind of go through this hot phase, and then it kind of passes, and you kind of become one with the heat almost. It's when you're on your 4th game in the heat, then you're kind of cooked and you're sunburned. And I will confess, I am not one of the best people to stay hydrated. I remember my early days umpiring. I used to bring a couple bottles of water and say, "Oh, that's it. I'll be fine." Mm-hmm. And now I take a little cooler. I throw a packet of Gatorade in my trunk just so I have the option to, hydrate. But the bugs are kind of, you deal with them. I mean, it depends what the field is. Actually, one of the worst fields for bugs is right by you on in Oxford at Horrigan Field. God, there's always mosquitoes. You could be doing a game in February, and there's mosquitoes buzzing around your face. Wow. I mean, but you kind of get used to the heat. I mean, there are definitely days when it's just so fucking hot that you just feel it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you kind of get, especially when you're only doing 2 games, it's not bad. You get the equipment off.
Yeah.
Because remember, we only do 7 innings, and a lot of the fall ball is time limited with the AAU stuff. So 2 hours and 2.5 hours tops is usually what you would spend with the equipment on. So it's not terrible.
So you were getting a lot of extra work at the beginning of the season, and you kind of cleaning up there but it takes a toll. But you were having a shortage of. I remember you were saying there's a shortage of, even in baseball umpiring on your level, there's a shortage of potential employees, correct?
Yes.
What's that about? Yeah. Why is that?
I mean, for every sport, I think there's a shortage of officials, but I think baseball is the one that's really hurting the most. Honestly, I think it's a couple of things. I think it is the weather. My father, who does basketball, will not do baseball because of the heat. But I think part of it is, again, it's just guys are getting older. I go to my union meetings and I look around, and the room's full of old fat white guys, some old skinny white guys, and I'm one of the younger umpires, and I'm 36, and there are guys who are a hell of a lot older than me, but there are a hell of a lot of guys who are younger than me, and I think honestly it's the mental toll. I mean, it's kind of the parents wear on you, and it's you you do get these outlandish stories you read in the newspaper where a parent will follow you out to the car, which, by the way, did happen to me once, but it was my fault. I was shooting my mouth off like an asshole, and I deserved to be followed to the car. But you see that there was an umpire. He was in his 70s. He was doing a tournament in New York, in New Jersey, I think it was, and one of the coaches it was on a balk call, which, by the way, balks are one of the stupidest things to call. You could probably call it balk more often than not. So you got to let the little things go.
I agree. Yep.
But he didn't like the call. He argued with them for like an inning, and then he took a swing and knocked out a 70-something-year-old man, broke his jaw. I think there are very extreme stories.
Wow.
But honestly, almost like sand between your joints, you feel it after a while. Even the small things, the constant just bitching and moaning about balls and strikes and safe and outs. I think it wears a lot of guys out. There was a report that high school baseball umpires in the past 5 years have lost 20% of their ranks.
Really?
Nationwide.
Really? Wow.
So, like you said, it's nice because during the beginning of the season there's just so many games. You have high school going on. You have travel ball going on. You have so many options for baseball. And even at the beginning of the summer, you have a lot of those wood bat leagues going on. High school's wrapping up, and you still have a lot of options. But, you clean up because there are games. If I wanted to, I could probably work every day, twice a day. But, again, it's just that constant berating, belittling by parents, by coaches. It wears guys out, and guys don't like it. It does take a mental toll. I mean, people sometimes forget that umpires are people too. I've had bad games behind the plate. I know when I have a bad game behind the plate. I don't need 20 parents who they think Junior's going to get robbed from his D1 scholarship telling me every 30 seconds that I suck. I know that game I suck.
Well, if you're conversely, though, I mean, that's probably no different than the majors because, like at a cozy park like Fenway, those umps can hit everything, right? So how many times?
They get paid a hell of a lot more than I get paid.
Yeah, they do. But like you said, there's still people too, right?
They are people. They are human beings.
Right. But, fans are not seeing, I guess I'm defending you guys because they're not seeing. I mean, I can see, I clearly know, when I see the Amica strike zone during a Red Sox game or a Toronto Blue Jays game, or, they got the digital strike zone of where the pitch should be. And there's certainly times where it's like, dude, that was a strike. And most umpires that are professional go, I fucked that up,
I've actually told pitchers after an inning, I'm sorry, I missed that pitch. That's my bad.
Yep.
And most time pitchers will be like, that's fine. But, again, it's amazing that the MLB umpires, they have like 98% and above accuracy rates. Like, it's incredible. But the one thing people forget is, if you're doing a 16, 17U high school AAU game, or a high school game for that matter, you don't want an MLB strike zone. You will never leave that ballpark. You have to give a little bit on the outside. You have to give a little bit on the inside. You got to give a little bit up. You got to give. I mean, you do that in college. There are college guys who tell me all the time. You don't necessarily. You call it if it's on the black or near the black. Something you may not give in a major league game, but you don't want to call that major league strike zone in a high school game because you take an hour and 45-minute game and you're going to easily make that a 2.5, 3-hour game if you have a really tight zone.
Yeah, right. You want the kids to put the bat on the ball.
Right. And I will say the other thing, Ken, and again, going back to my playing days, back in my heyday when I was a high school baseball star, kids don't swing anymore. And I don't know if that's, coaches mimicking what they see in Major League Baseball, but kids take so many pitches. And, and that's the other thing about baseball that for umpires, it's like every play starts and ends with an umpire's call. And in basketball, you miss a call, you run back up the court, no biggie. In baseball, though, every single strike or ball you call that has an effect on the game. And kids taking a lot of pitches and they're getting upset when you ring them up on an outside, changeup or a fastball. It's kids just don't want to swing as much as they used to.
Yeah, they're like, like the movie Moneyball. Do I care if it's a walk or a hit, Rocco? I do not. He gets on base. I don't know. Yeah, well, sports change and they change with the times and things like that. And yeah, like you were saying about the home runs. Technique, strategy, and Major League Baseball has to adapt to kind of like what the fans want too. I mean, you remember the steroid era. I mean, I believe the owners just turned away and said, hey, the fans are eating this up. They think the ball was just juiced, not the players, because it was wrapped tightly coming from Japan, and that was what led to Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa having that, home run kind of challenge going on,
Right.
where Hank Aaron's saying, I'll never acknowledge Barry Bonds for breaking my record. I mean,
right. But Ken, it's almost like it's because it's something nobody had seen before. Nobody was alive. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. There are very few people who are alive when Roger Maris and all of them were beating the hell out of the ball, and it was something amazing. But it's like a train wreck. You don't see one, and it's like, whoa, that's incredible. But you don't want to go every day and see a train wreck. That's not fun anymore.
Right.
And it's just become a thing where the home run has become so desensitized. And again, now you get a guy like Chris Davis for the Baltimore Orioles who hit 220, but he hit 30 bombs.
Wow.
And I mean, the guy in his beginning of his career was on like a first ballot Hall of Fame trajectory.
Yeah.
Until he all of a sudden the pitchers realized he can't lay off the high fastball, he can't lay off the low fastball. He couldn't even lay off a wiffle ball. I mean, but again, it's just he had a job and he got a massive. I don't know the numbers, but he got a massive contract from the Orioles because again, the long chips dig the long ball. People love the long ball, but now I think people are so desensitized to home runs that it doesn't calculate like it used to.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Peters. Hey, we're going to leave it there. And we get a lot of comments from, System. Thank you, System, for tuning in live. And, we can catch this. People can catch this on the re-click. Peter and I do this. We try to get this done maybe once every couple of months. And there's always something changing. But I think we covered a lot of things local tonight, a lot of things fun in baseball. And even if you're not a baseball fan, we talked about kind of what the good, bad, and the ugly of baseball, and the good, bad, and ugly of Worcester as well as all the good things, right? I mean, so any closing words, Mr. Cush?
Well, I was going to say, if anybody wants a job, it's very lucrative. Come on and become a baseball umpire or a basketball official. Or you know what? It's like what were the Masons? If you're interested, just ask. It's a fun side career. The pay is fine. You meet some great guys. You have some fun. You get some sun, and then maybe you get a couple of beers after the game.
Sounds good. So how would someone, if I were interested in becoming an ump on your level, what would I do?
Depending on what area you're in, if you just Google your local association, it'll have all the links to it.
Okay.
If you're out in the Worcester area, feel free to reach out to Kenny in the comment section, and I will make sure I point them in the right direction.
Sounds good, Mr. K. All right, Peter K., thanks for being live on Cities and Suburbs. Thank you, all our viewers tonight. And we certainly wish you well. Be safe. And we are certainly not out of the heat wave yet. Again, the whole northern hemisphere from here to Europe is on fire. From here, I'm in Charlton, but Charlton's on fire tonight, and the planet's burning to a cinder. So stock up your ice cubes.
I feel like you need to play "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel to take us out. But
I would do that, but we have copyright infringements. So
what if I sing it?
You want to sing it? Go ahead. We'll see if it goes through.
I'm not going to sing it. I'm not going to sing it. All I know is "We Didn't Start the Fire."
All right.
It's always been burning.
We didn't start the fire, so we can close out with "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." Peter Cush.
Kenny Biffin, have a good one, brother.
Thanks for being on, my friend.
Take it easy.
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. Peter K was in the house. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, System, and the others for tuning in. System says, I love Worcester. I love the Big W, too. All right. Thanks, System, for being on. Thanks, guys. And we'll catch you next time live on Cities and Suburbs or on video. We do a couple of videos a week, and we go live a couple times a month. All right. Take care. So long.